This room represents the Iron Age, lasting from 1300 BC to 600 BC. This was a time in the Jordan region when it was divided three ways. Edom representing the south kingdom, Moab in the central, and Ammon in the north. The three kingdoms came into conflict with both the ancient Israelites and the Philistines, or the sea people from the Mediterranean. Philistines, in fact, brought the workings and the technology of the Iron Age to this region. Represented are water and storage vessels from this period. This room represents the Iron Age, lasting from 1300 BC to 600 BC. In the Jordan region during this time period, there were three kingdoms: Edom in the south, Moab in the central Jordan, and Ammon in the north. These three kingdoms came into conflict with not only the ancient Israelites over food, land, and water, but also the Philistines. The Philistines were in fact the ones to bring ironworking to this region. In this room is represented both water and storage vessels. Here is the olive press, a fragment of the olive press. The olive press and olives were a prominent crop of this region and brought much success in trade and production. Here's another storage vessel, a large storage vessel that's been mended. This is a closer look at the olive press. The olive tree has always been an integral part of cultures of the Mediterranean region. The olive is a fruit that has been cultivated as far back as 5000 BC, and olive oil presses date back as far as 3000 BC. Consumers in the antiquity noticed various benefits as a result of the consumption of olives and the oils they produced. Ancient societies utilized numerous methods to extract the oil from massive amounts of olives. Circular stone platforms had an indentation carved within the platform, which allowed for a circular stone to rotate along the indentation, crushing olives in its path. The oil was then funneled through a single location upon the stone platform where holding a pot was placed. The oil extracted from the olives was and still is used abundantly in anything from cooking to even healing. In the Middle Ages, Jordanian oil was an important export commodity. Many olive groves were owned by the Sultan himself. The olive has been a symbol of peace and cultural identity to the Mediterranean region and its people. Research done on the processes and consumption of olives in ancient times gives us a better understanding of the cultures encompassing the Mediterranean region. Archaeological evidence is crucial to interpreting the past and providing the historical importance of a cultural process such as olive pressing. Here's a closer look at one of the vessels from the Iron Age period. This is a large water jar. It is rare at Hispan because of its date. There are many biblical references to this site. This jar is coarse and very porous, ideally suited to holding water, and it is likely that it would have stood outside of the home.
This case represents the classical late antique period. From 312 BC to 106 AD, before their defeat by the Romans, the Nabateans gradually abandoned their nomadic ways and settled in southern Jordan, Palestine, and northern Arabia. In 65 BC, their growing economic and political power began to worry the Romans, who eventually defeated them in 106 AD. Heshbon was never part of the Nabatean kingdom, but it was located in a region that was disputed between the Nabateans and the Romans in Syria. After 106 AD, Ephesus, as Heshbon was known to the Romans, became an important stopping point for travelers and merchants alike. Evidence suggests the town hosted a typical Roman acropolis with a marketplace and several public buildings extending beyond the tell, with a temple at the summit. During the Roman occupation, Heshbon reached its highest population and was fortified, and improvements were made to the city as well as the addition of roads. During the Byzantine period, 330 to 630 AD, Heshbon was its most prosperous. The remains of a church date to this period, and it appears to have been a large basilica used in pilgrimages. The water cisterns were still being used to quench the thirst of its large population, which was now approximately 3,000 households, not counting pilgrims, and the people were growing food intensively. During the 630s through the 640s, Heshbon underwent peaceful conquest by the Muslims, and Christians remained in the site for quite some time afterwards.
This room represents the early Islamic period. The early Islamic period began in the 7th century AD and lasted up until the middle of the 10th century AD. This time period is comprised of two major empires, the Umayyad and the Abbasid. The Prophet Muhammad is an important figure in the early Islamic period due to his discovering of the Islamic faith. This religious view has transcended the history of the Islamic periods, and its historical and archaeological importance is still crucial to research today. The Umayyad Empire reigned from 661 to 750, arose as the first Islamic empire with Damascus as its capital. The Umayyads are known for constructing the famous Dome of the Rock Mosque in Jerusalem. As the Umayyad Empire spread, so did the Islamic faith throughout most of the Middle East. Civil unrest also emerged with a series of revolts that ended the Umayyad's reign. The newly formed Abbasid Empire put an end to Umayyad control and moved the capital to Baghdad. The Abbasids remained the dominant force of the Middle East for the next 2 centuries.
This case represents more closely some of the imports from Iraqi colorings that were imported into Jordan. It has yellow, brown, and green glaze on it, and these are cut fragments. To your right is going to be the same coloring and same imports, just they're the plate fragments of the same set. This fragment is a thin Umayyad red on white painted cup and has an intricate floral pattern, and was used on all housewares, including cups, jars, jugs, and plates.
These next 3 cases represent a continuation of the early Islamic wares. However, these are locally made wares, pottery, basins. Represented in this particular case is the festoon pattern, which is a suspended loop painted on pottery and basins. Also is the Kerbschnitt style, which is a pressing or stamping of pottery